Actor Trevor is on a journey to Wales and his family's past, a journey he's always longed to take. Trevor rose to fame in 1979 as the Bristol-based private detective Eddie Shoestring. Most recently, he's recognisable as Detective Superintendent Peter Boyd in the long-running BBC drama Waking the Dead. Although thought of as English, Trevor's roots run deeply into Wales.
My mother, who is Welsh, my father wasn't Welsh. I grew up in Birmingham, but I spent a lot of time here in South Wales for various reasons that may or may not become apparent during the course of the day.
Trevor is travelling to the Mumbles near Swansea, where he spent many happy childhood holidays.
My name, original spelling of my name was Trefor.
That was, of course, the Welsh spelling. Trevor's father was English, but his mother was Welsh, and it's her roots he's here to explore.
My grandpa Charlie, I remember, who was a miner, and I remember the days of the tin bath and in front of the fire, which now, just in a couple of generations later, sounds so remote, but yeah, I remember that.
Here in the Mumbles, Trevor is finally coming home. Later in the programme, Trevor discovers a war hero in the family.
Wow, that's something, isn't it?
Reveals his musical side and discovers an uncomfortable truth about his past.
You feel sad and excluded. Yeah.
Trevor is on his way to All Saints Church near Swansea in the heart of the Mumbles. Now he's finally here, he's more than a little nervous about what genealogist Mike Churchill-Jones may have uncovered.
Hi Trevor, welcome to All Saints Church in Oystermouth. We've been researching your family tree. And under here, we have it.
Well, I can see that in a frame already on the wall.
Yeah,
that's
indeed.
good. My God.
Right at the bottom is your good self.
Okay. Right.
Trevor's ancestors are all Welsh on his mother's side, beginning with Francis Woosnam, his 5 times great-grandfather from Montgomeryshire.
Woosnam.
Yes.
We're not going to go golf, are we?
Surprisingly, golf-mad Trevor is right. Francis Woosnam was also the 7 times great-grandfather of Welsh golf star Ian Woosnam, making them distant cousins.
God. Okay.
Apart from the Woosnams, Trevor's family in the Mumbles were called the Collier family.
So if we come back to your second great-grandmother, Susanna Watts Collier. She was born in 1826 in the Mumbles.
Right here.
Yes, indeed, right here.
That's why I've always felt comfortable at Mumbles on my holidays.
And she was born to an Anne Phillips and a William Collier.
Right.
William Collier was a postman.
Uh-huh.
William Collier's story will prove to be very important. Trevor is also keen to learn more about his grandfather Charles Hamer from his mother's side of the family.
Charles William Hamer, he was born 1882 in Troyderoo in Merthyr Tydfil.
Right.
And he died 1955 in Neath. He worked in the colliery as a hewer and a repairer.
Yeah, okay.
Trevor's grandfather Charlie married Gladys. Gladys was Trevor's grandmother. Much later in life, she came to live with Trevor and his mother in the family home in Birmingham. In trying to unravel the story of Gladys, his grandmother, he will uncover a family secret kept hidden from Trevor for more than 50 years. Trevor's search for his ancestors begins in the heart of the Mumbles. Records show that his 3 times great-grandfather lived here from 1818. His name was William Collier, and he married local girl Anne Phillips. Together, they had 11 children. In the Mumbles and amongst the outlying farms dotted along these nearby cliffs, as the postman, William would have been a very familiar face. To try and help understand what the area was like at that time, Trevor meets with Mumbles historian Carol Powell, who has been researching Anne and William's story.
So, William Collier, what would he have? What would he have been? What would it have been like for him?
He would have come in about 1818 to a very small village. The entire parish was only about 1,000, so this corner of the parish would only have had several hundred.
He lived.
He lived in the Duns initially,
Yeah.
which is near where the square is now.
Yeah.
And by 1841, he was up on the hill up there
And
in
you
Thistlebourne. We don't know from the census which house it was.
But this is because he had apparently 11
yeah,
children with Anne Phillips, who was a
yeah.
local girl.
Yes, yes. So,
He must have liked Anne Phillips.
yes,
Mustn't
he must have. Yeah.
Carol has a painting to show Trevor, believed to be the work of local Swansea artist J.H. Robinson. It shows the bay called Oystermouth Bay as it was in William's time, dominated then, as now, by Oystermouth Castle.
Where are we standing?
Just about here or here,
There
one
you
of
go.
these. Yeah.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
As William Collier would
Yeah,
have known it.
that's what he would have seen.
Brilliant.
The main industries at that time would have been oyster dredging,
Yeah.
quarrying, farming,
Yeah.
because all this was surrounded by farms.
Oystermouth didn't get its name by chance. Robinson's painting clearly shows the oyster fishermen at work.
By about 1860 odd,
Yeah.
there would have been 600 people working in oyster dredging around here. That's a lot of people.
So this was they got the oysters here and supplied them to the rest of the country?
Yes, yeah.
This traditional way of life lasted for centuries in Oystermouth. But over the bay, Swansea's rapid industrialisation and pollution from copper smelting destroyed the oyster beds forever. Later, tourism became the mainstay of the town.
This became quite a sophisticated resort, didn't
Yeah,
it?
tourism was on the rise.
Yeah, and today it is spectacular.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I love it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely beautiful.
It's easy to imagine why Trevor's 3 times great-grandfather William Collier came to live here in this beautiful part of the world. But Trevor will shortly learn that William was more than simply the local Mumbles postman.
I get the feeling that on this day of surprises that I am going to find out more about William Collier, and I would be extremely interested to do so. Yeah.
Trevor is heading back to All Saints' Church to learn of William Collier's life before he came to settle in the Mumbles.
He was the postman in the village of Mumbles,
Right.
but he also did other things. He was also the schoolmaster,
Yeah.
which can be echoed here on the baptism of your 2 times great-grandmother, Susanna Watts Collier, in 1826, tells us that her parents were William and Anne, and he was a schoolmaster.
This is believed to be the original schoolhouse where William Collier taught. He was therefore clearly a well-educated man.
Right.
William had another life before he settled in the Mumbles, and Trevor is about to find out just how removed it was from the tranquility of this seaside town.
Unfortunately, we haven't got a photograph of William. He died in 1870. But what we can show you is what he looked like in 1814.
William Collier. Wow.
He was in the Prince of Wales Hussars.
So what happened to him? He was in all this finery and then he became a postman.
I've got an extract of his obituary here from the Cambrian News, which I'd like you to read from the top.
Cambrian News, 15th of July, 1870. Mr. William Collier died in his 77th year of his age. For many years he was a schoolmaster of the Swansea Union, but retired some years ago on superannuation. He served with the 10th Hussars, the crack regiment of the Prince Regent. He was one of the few remaining of those who took part in the Battle of Waterloo.
What's your thoughts?
Wow. That's something, isn't it? That is something. The few remaining of those who took part in the Battle of Waterloo. My God.
So you've learned he was a distinguished man in Mumbles, but it's far removed from the elite military man
So
he
that's a
was.
strange move, isn't it? He's a sort of a war, if not hero, but honoured in battle. And then he...
Well, I would suspect he wanted to be a prominent member of a growing community, and that's what he became.
Right. So he came here and sort of ran everything in terms... So in those days, if you were delivering the post and teaching at the
Indeed.
school...
There was no post office here then, but he was the postman.
Right. He probably did it on horseback with his thing.
Indeed, indeed.
Well, that's...
Highly regarded.
That's something. That is something. That's fascinating and proud moment, that, isn't it?
In 1815, French Emperor Napoleon made his last stand against the Duke of Wellington at Waterloo. As a cavalry soldier in the 10th Hussars, William Collier was in the heart of this famous battle. But why was Waterloo so celebrated in history? To find out more, Trevor joins expert Professor Chris Williams from Swansea University.
The Battle of Waterloo takes place in June 1815, and it's the culmination of what were called Napoleon's 100 Days.
Were they heroes after the Battle of Waterloo, that particular regiment? Or?
Anybody that served at Waterloo was regarded as a hero. It was the first battle in British history for which all ranks, that is not just the officers but the private soldiers as well, were given a campaign medal. And to be a Waterloo veteran was something that would have been
So
known.
I can be proud.
I think you can be proud. I think people would have been very impressed to have this man in their midst.
As a cavalry soldier, William would have been thrust into head-to-head combat with the enemy. After the defeat of Napoleon, William Collier returned a hero, and back in the Mumbles was appointed Ward of Oystermouth Castle, a position of great authority and responsibility.
He became a prominent member of this society. He was the postman. He had the responsibility of everything, coming and communicating with everybody, and the school teacher. And wow,
So he had quite a position of authority in the community.
Yeah. That's a very imposing man. That's fascinating.
Trevor has clearly enjoyed learning of this story.
I'm genuinely thrilled, and now, of course, I will become an obsessive researcher of the Battle of Waterloo. I expected some sort of creative, maybe an artist or a musician or something, you know, who destroyed themselves through excess of some substance, but something tragic like that, but not a military hero. No, the Battle of Waterloo, that's quite something.
Trevor has enjoyed his time here in the Mumbles, but very soon he must leave this area and move on to the next revelation in his family story. He came to the Mumbles on many family holidays as a young boy, so this spot has always had a very special place in his heart. But now he's anxious to follow the story of his grandparents, from his mother's side of the family tree. His much-loved grandmother Gladys, and his grandfather Charlie, a coal miner from Merthyr Tydfil. So does Trevor know how his grandfather came here to Swansea, from his home in Merthyr some 40 miles away?
I don't know how he ended up in Swansea. I don't know whether it's because no, I don't suppose he'd have met my grandmother Gladys and followed her. No, I don't know. I would like to know about Grandpa Charlie, yeah.
In fact, Trevor is passing Swansea Prison, where his grandfather was sent in 1911. It's a story, as yet, Trevor knows nothing about. To learn of this episode, Trevor is heading for the Rhondda Heritage Centre near Pontypridd. His grandfather was a hewer in the South Wales mines. As a young man, he lost his father, which seems to have had a direct effect on the next part of his life, as Mike Churchill-Jones has discovered.
Your great-grandfather, he died a premature death at the age of 45. Right. And your grandfather was 16 when this occurred. Mm-hmm. The mother decided to marry again some 8 months later.
She didn't hang around then?
She didn't hang around.
Okay.
Created a bit of upheaval, I think, in your grandfather's life.
Uh-huh.
He basically, he descended into drink, as far as I can tell, and it caused him to get in trouble with the authorities. This is an extract from the Assizes in 1910, which just outlines 3 offences. Drunk and disorderly, and he was selling liquor without a licence, and then finally, he assaulted someone, and he was on bail at the time.
So he went to prison?
We find him in 1911
Oh, yes.
in the prison in Swansea.
So this is my grandfather's...
No, this is your grandfather. This is Charles William Hamer, born 1882 in Troyderoo
this is
in
my
Merthyr.
grandfather.
If you turn the page, you'll actually find him.
I'm with it.
on the
It
bottom.
takes a bit of time for these stories to sink in.
Indeed,
So
indeed.
basically, his father died at 45.
Yes.
And then his mother remarried. He got upset by it, turned to drink, and started, by all accounts, beating people up in the local community.
He did, by the looks of it. I understand.
But
that
he was a sort of
tough man.
He was a tough man, and he was sort of known as a boxer and a fighter, wasn't
He was sentenced to 12 months hard labour.
he? Oh my God! As if he wasn't going to do enough hard labour in his life anyway.
But I think that's turned his life around. As far as I know, his life was much better from there on.
Well, good for him. Good for him.
Trevor was aged just 4 when his grandfather Charlie died. But now he wants to follow the story of Gladys, his grandmother, who came from Gleneath. Whilst in Wales, Trevor is staying in Swansea, but for the next part of his journey, he's setting off to nearby Gleneath.
Well, I think it's easier for me to make contact with Gleneath because that's a place where I stayed as a child, and my memories are there. And my mother, although I grew up with her in Birmingham, she maintained and kept her Welshness absolutely sacrosanct, and so this has a much more direct emotional connection than William Collier, my great-great-great-grandfather in the Battle of Waterloo, which is wonderful, but that's more of a sort of objective appreciation than an emotional connection.
Trevor's mother, Elsie, was keen for him to know of his Welsh roots, and as a young boy, he even learnt to sing in Welsh.
I have a sort of powerful baritone, and I think that probably in ancient times my ancestors had that echoing around the valleys. Yeah, I sense that. Yeah.
In fact, his singing voice will later be put to the test, as waiting to surprise him is the Gleneath Male Voice Choir. But how much Welsh does Trevor really understand?
The Welsh speaking used to happen on the phone. You'd hear, oh no, oh no, and then the next lot would be Welsh, because that's where the secrets were always, so I sort of associate the Welsh language with secrets.
Trevor is about to learn of one of those secrets. He's finally arriving in Gleneath and the small village of Pont Neath Fechan, the place that has been home to generations of his family. It's here that his mother Elsie lived, and where his grandmother Gladys ran the local pub. Being here in this village is very important to Trevor. Still nestling on the banks of the Neath Fechan River, in the heart of the village, is the White Horse Inn, the home of his mother and grandmother, to whom he was so close. Here he will learn of a secret involving his grandparents that his family never shared with him. Growing up, Trevor always knew that his grandparents had 2 children, his mum, Elsie, and his much-loved Uncle Jack.
They had 2 children.
Yes.
They had your mother, who was born in 1915.
That's right.
And Jack was born in 1920.
Yeah.
But there were other children born to them.
Ah.
In between, there was a child called Alban Charles Hamer, born in 1918. And that's his death certificate.
So he died when he was
5 months.
5 months. That's interesting, because there's always been talk of an Alban.
Is there?
Yeah, but not that he died as a child.
He was 5 months old. And there was another child born in 1925 called Maud, who only lived
1 hour. Premature birth.
But two children you never knew anything about.
No, I never knew anything about them.
Your aunt and uncle.
Wow. Well, I've learnt about that in front of however many hundreds of thousands of viewers there are. That's kind of... It's funny how people never tell you these things, isn't it? Poor people. That's a tragedy, isn't it?
Yes.
Well, that's something. That's something. Yeah, so my mother was 10. It's interesting because I mean, I don't know that this goes any way to explaining my mother's departure from this part of the world when she was 16. I don't know that that does, but it's interesting because no one ever really knew, and she never talked about why she left this part of the world when she was 16, which is 1931, which was quite something to do in those days. Wow. Yeah. I wonder if my auntie knows of these, and my brother doesn't. Oh, extraordinary.
Clearly, not having his mother or grandmother to share the story with him has deeply affected Trevor. Learning for the first time of an auntie and uncle he knew nothing about.
I just feel excluded, really. You feel sad. Sad and excluded. Yeah. God, 1918, 1925 here, the isolation and the fact that they lived with that pain, and there was no one to counsel them, or get them through it, you know. I think those things are important to pass on. Because experience helps people live with their present. Extraordinary.
Back at the White Horse pub, the Glynneath Male Voice Choir are busy rehearsing a homecoming performance for Trevor. Trevor did have a much-loved uncle in Wales who made it into adulthood, his Uncle Jack. Sadly, Jack died a few years ago, but his widow Glenys still lives nearby with first cousin Nigel.
I don't know whether you know about Elsie's. There was Uncle Jack, and there were 2 other children.
Oh, yes.
I knew you
Well,
would.
I can't say, well, I don't, but I remember And one of them died with
There
the flu epidemic.
There was Alban.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
we
that's
knew
right.
about him, yeah.
Who was 5 months old, and he died of pneumonia
That's right.
in 1918. No one ever told me this, though. And there was Maud, who was born in 1925, lived for 1 hour, and premature birth.
Yes.
Well, our grandmother was Gladys Maud.
Yeah.
Yes. But I do remember her talking about this when the epidemic.
So you knew about that? I told you
Yes.
my Auntie Gladys was
Yeah,
there,
right.
because she knows everything. Now, what else was there? Well, you can see that I'm strongly Welsh.
And we always thought you were, Trev. Always thought you were.
It's amazing, I think.
There's one final treat in store at the White Horse Inn, Trevor's family pub. A performance from the Glynneath Male Voice Choir.
Hello.
Joined by his Auntie Glenys and cousin Nigel, Trevor is about to learn that he's not just here to listen.
They tell me you've got a fine baritone voice. Would you like to join the choir for Colin Randy?
Of course. I don't know. I don't know the words. What are we going to sing then, lads? Oh, God. I feel defined sort of character and personality-wise by a Welsh temperament. I think I recognise myself through my mother in terms of emotional expression. It is important to pass it on to my children, and I think they're very aware of their heritage. I must say, I was really honoured to be asked to have my Welsh connections recognised by somebody other than myself, because I've obviously always been totally aware of them. So I felt very flattered by that, and yeah, I feel it feels that I've made a kind of public display about my Welshness, and that I'm proud of.
And actress Alison Steadman discovers some home truths next Wednesday at 8:30 here on BBC One Wales.